Yo, JD here. And as you can see, we are back finally once again. And apologies, I haven't been doing too much content recently, but taking a bit of a break from everything. But I will be doing a lot more regular videos again, I'd say probably from next week onwards, especially when we have F123 very close on the horizon. So please let me know what kind of content you'd like me to do. I was even thinking of doing things such as tutorials for no assists, turning off the traction ABS racing line, because I think if anyone is thinking about doing that before the release of F123, it's probably a really good time now to actually try and test those waters. But back with this video itself, and F123 really is the main topic, which by now the game you would like to think is probably completed, that they're going to be testing because they're actually going to be doing a beta very, very soon. But I really want to hear your opinion on what you think this game should contain, the absolute fundamentals, and really what Codemasters can actually learn from F122, because I think it's been no secret, not just through my videos, but from watching many other content creators or just listening to community in general, F122 has been quite a disappointment compared to previous titles. And I felt the game actually started off really well. Actually, within the first month, I was very, very hyped and actually quite excited to get into the life cycle. But since then, I think there have been many things that have happened, not just with this cheating scandal and all that stuff, but there are many things really throughout the year of this game that really has kind of drained the experience, in my opinion. So really for F123, I think the absolute number one thing I would like to see is EA and Codemasters actually listening to the community. Because at the end of the day, the people who are playing this game hours and hours a day, they're going to probably find so many more things than what the developers will be doing within the testing phase, because they can't really test it online too much apart from this beta. And even in the beta, it's not going to be anywhere near the same level of people on different platforms like it is when the game is actually going to be released. So I think one of the things that really kind of let me down from F122 was the community gave really good feedback. They told Codemasters what was wrong, what they liked, what they didn't like, what things really should have a priority fix. But many of these things simply weren't addressed or weren't even changed until many, many months later, until, you know, there isn't really any point in doing that anymore. I can understand from a Cody's perspective, maybe not everything is a very quick fix, but there were many scenarios where something quite fundamental in the game just was not functioning correctly, and they decided to do like a livery update or something like that. And I kind of felt in many of those scenarios that that was really just trying to keep the community at peace and happy, rather than actually addressing what the issues were. And I think the most disappointing thing for me was actually the change of the handling at the beginning of F122. I know the traction was very difficult at the start, and a lot of people having quite a few issues with that. May not actually have been realistic, but I think even the traction after the change wasn't realistic, and I just felt like the handling change really made the game feel very inconsistent, and for me personally, just didn't really feel as satisfying to play. And the main reason for that change is simply because the AI were too overpowered, and in order to change the power of the AI, they actually had to change the physics of the game slightly, which has a pretty significant knock-on effect. So the number one thing I really hope they can take, I don't expect the game to be perfect upon a release or launch, because I know every game, no matter what the developer company who's making it, there are always going to be teething problems. But I think it's really important to actually listen to your player base, because not only will you get the respect from them, but you will actually, hopefully, address the main fundamentals of the game and make it a much more enjoyable experience throughout the game's life cycle. I think the second thing is definitely a more stable online experience. I know we didn't have crossplay on launch of F122. That did come a couple months down the line. Crossplay, I feel, didn't really work that well, so I think that definitely has to be a big priority moving forward, because many of the issues were that you just couldn't invite players when you were trying to add them to the EA friends list. And just in general, it was just very hard to find lobbies, and you usually had to keep restarting a session every 20-30 minutes. The game was quite unreliable, especially on the PC platform where it was crashing all the time. I don't even know if we do have dedicated servers, but if we don't, then that's something I think we really do need to have now, because with the player base, with F1 being such a huge sport, if the official F1 game is not really living up to standard, then I would hope F1 themselves are going to take a look at that and think actually it needs to kind of match the caliber of the production of the real life. So I think having a much more stable online experience where you're not going to have as many game crashes, it's going to be easy to find lobbies, you're not waiting hours and hours in loading screens trying to get in. I could go on and on. I think there's so many things you could talk about the online, which please mention down below what your experience have been of that. But I think online now, whether you're just a PC player or, just a career mode player or someone like that, I think online now is a huge thing of this game, especially with the rise of esports and how much that's getting bigger. I think a lot more of a focus and priority needs to go into that to make it a very stable, seamless experience. But moving over to the career mode, personally, the reason why I haven't played it on F1 22, although many people do seem to enjoy watching it, I think especially at the start of the game, it's probably one of the most viewed kind of videos at the start, just so you can see what the AI is like and what the story element's like. But that's exactly why I don't play it. I just feel like the career mode just isn't immersive whatsoever. There really isn't a story element. It's simply just going from track to track, reading a few emails in between, updating your R&D tree, and that is it. I would even go as far to say as story or the career mode on F1 2010 or other Codemaster games like Race Driver Grid, Toco Race Driver, that felt so much more captivating and immersive than what the official F1 22 game is. And I think we had Breaking Point on F1 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And no, that was quite cool, but that was something that didn't really last that long and it was over quite quickly. I think a lot more effort needs to be put into the career mode where you actually have a story element, depending on what options you choose, what team you go with, what teammate you have. There are going to be many more cutscenes that you have to go through. At the moment, for me, it just really feels like I'm going in Grand Prix mode and just updating my car throughout the season. That doesn't really feel much of a difference between them. And I think if they really did make that immersive career mode, then I would definitely love to play it a lot more. I think many other people would like to do it as well. And especially since how long Codemasters have had these games for, I feel like it should be way further ahead than it currently is. And that leads me on to the next point of improving the AI, because in a lot of cases, they've either been too easy or just far too difficult. And to be fair, I think the 110 AI should be almost impossible to beat. I think that's the point of that extra 10%. It should be almost near impossible. But I think the issue is at times that you just can't even replicate what they're doing, and they can just out-accelerate you, just have more grip, they have more EOS, there's absolutely nothing you can do. And again, I know it's going to be probably quite difficult to program an AI, especially in a racing game where there are probably so many more variables and calculations to consider. But they kind of always do the same thing. They always love going side by side. If you go for a move down the inside, they go really slow in the apex. It's a little bit predictable at times, and that's why I just don't think it even feels remotely close to actually racing an actual real person online. So I think definitely a lot more focus needs to go into the AI, because it definitely feels quite lackluster to me at this stage. I think the next one is more accurate tracks. I think tracks such as Spa, that's probably the biggest one that hasn't really had many updates. Just trying to make it as close to realistic as possible, because at the end of the day, they've had access to these tracks. The tracks don't really change. It's not like it's 20 different tracks each year. Yes, we have some new additions now and again, but I think some of them are quite outdated now. don't necessarily need to be laser scanned, although I think actually maybe it should be because it's an official F1 game. No, it's not quite a simulation, but no, they've got the resources to do it. They've got the information from F1 to do it. I'm sure they have the permission. I think we need to start really making the tracks a lot more closer to real life, because there are a few on this game that are actually quite substantially different. And talking about the tracks, I think having a lot more consistent track limits. I think a good example would be like at Silverstone going into the old Turn 1. Sometimes if you go slightly out wide, it will invalidate you, but then if you just go completely off the circuit and then come back, it won't invalidate you. So I think the track limits do need to be a lot more consistent, and really just to gain physics as well. Because this year we had the issue with the FPS, where if you were running above 60 FPS on a PC, the physics actually changed, where the curb would actually, your car would actually bottom out on the curb and it would launch you, such as the Monza chicane, going wide on certain corners. I think we just really need to address that, and hopefully through testing with the beta, those things are going to be tested a lot more thoroughly now. But really, you just want to have a consistency with the track limits, and the game physics doesn't change depending on what car you're in, doesn't change depending on what graphic settings you have. Really want to have really the ultimate consistency as much as you can over the game. And my next one would be to bring back features that the community actually enjoyed. I think for me, I don't think we've had this since 2013, but if you've been playing long enough, then there was a mode called Sprint Mode, where you could literally just go on your home screen, go into the Sprint Mode option, and it would just throw you into a random 3-lap or 5-lap race with a random lobby. You don't even have to search for it. Random tracks, and there's no actual host of the lobby. The game actually regenerates a new track after every single race. You stay in the same car, you get points, and that was one of the best game modes ever, because it was just so easy to get into. You didn't need to search for anything. It was just very, very simple, and probably the most fun you actually had online. No idea why they didn't decide to continue that. I think other things such as the classic cars, those were brilliant. And I think on games such as 2020, when the Ferrari F2004 were so fun to drive. But then this year we've had things such as the F1 Life, where you save up to buy a sofa or some new sunglasses or something like that, which it kind of feels to me that, and this is just not Codemasters, but I think a lot of gaming developers, they feel like they need to add something different in order to sell the game, a unique selling point. So if they just kept everything the same and they didn't say there was any new features or anything like that, then they fear they might not sell the game, which I do understand to a degree. I do feel there always does need to be a new feature, but actually make those features worthwhile and useful, because I think the F1 Life, no one really cares about it at all, in my opinion. So having the classic cars, short version of tracks like the Bahrain short, the USA short, the Silverstone short, those were absolutely amazing. I don't know if that's down to, licensing or something like that they can't use it, because I know they are quite strict on those things. But the short version of the tracks were absolutely incredible. Maybe even running some tracks in reverse. Again, could be down to licensing, because F1 is very, very hot on those things. But those things worked in previous games. People absolutely loved them. People made so many videos on all of these things, but they've been taken away. And that kind of links back to listening to the community, understanding what actually worked before instead of removing it. And I think really the final thing, which doesn't really need any introduction, is develop a sophisticated anti-cheat system. I've already done many videos on this. I'm not going to beat a dead horse anymore, but I think for the integrity and longevity of F1 esports, and people who just want to be competitive and have fun and reach their potential, this is something that really does need to be fixed pretty much ASAP from when the game is released, because for the last 10 years, although it's got a lot of traction recently, cheating has always been a big problem. And yeah, with F1 esports this year, that needs to be sorted out 1,000,000%. But hopefully this wasn't too long video. Please let me know what you would like to see, what you think they actually need to focus on in the game. Try and make it realistic, your suggestions and points. Thank you so much for support on the channel. I will be back doing open lobbies next week, because I haven't done them for quite a while, and I actually will be continuing my coaching from now until, let's say, a few weeks before the release of the F123 game. So if you click the join button, you'll get a discount code with that, with my one-to-one coaching sessions. Make sure you go to www.coachcinemas.com, and I will be catching you very, very soon. Peace.